These are the next 7 fantasy books I am planning on reading. Now I usually don't make TBR videos, so I thought I would put a tiny twist on this one.
Intriguing. Very intriguing.
Instead of just listing the books I'm planning on reading, I'm actually gonna give them a star rating before I have read them, which is basically just a guess of what star rating I think I'm gonna give this book, and then when I read these books, we'll be able to review if I was correct or not. Also, if you wonder why my background is different, it's just because I'm currently in the Faroe Islands, I'm traveling, and I don't have the books behind me, so yeah, you just have to be okay with a bed being there. Okay, the first of the 7 next books I want to read is The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. Actually, I'm technically cheating here because I only need to read 100 more pages in this one, but if you don't know already, then I'm hosting a read-along for this one. We're reading this book in June, so if you haven't joined it yet, you can still join the read-along. There's so much time and we are having lots of fun and interesting discussions, and this book is very, very interesting. I think I'll probably make a full dedicated review for this one because I am personally really enjoying it, but it definitely has a bit of a steep learning curve and it's very different from many books I read in the past. But what I'll say so far is that this has some of the most unique and interesting world building I've come across in a while, and the prose is very interesting, but it fits the world so beautiful. But I'm not going to make a full dedicated review for this one yet because I still need to read 100 pages, but I am guessing that this will probably be a 4 out of 5 star read, all depending on how this book ends. It might potentially be 4.5, but we will see about that one. But yeah, if you haven't already, then there's still time to join the read along. We're going to read this book in June and the next one in July and the third book in August. Alright, and the second book I also want to read next, which is also kind of cheating because I am 20% into this book, but that is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. The reason why I'm reading this book finally is because my Patreons voted for it, and I am so happy because this book has literally been on my TBR for around 3 years, and man, the hype for Red Rising is absolutely insane, especially now that book 6 is coming out, and it is one of those sci-fi series that I think is finally gonna be able to make me fall in love with the sci-fi genre. I've talked about it many times on this channel, but I have really struggled with this sci-fi genre a lot, and people have recommended again and again and again that I should read Red Rising because apparently it's very character driven. Now I'm only around 20% into it, and I've heard the first 30% of the first book is a bit rough, which I kinda can see, but I'm definitely very, very intrigued. I think the concept is very interesting and I still have so many questions, and from what I've heard, then the book 2 and 3 and even the later books just are a huge and massive step up in quality when it comes to characterizations and writing and prose and so on. So I absolutely can't wait. I'm so happy to be finally reading the series, and it was one of the priority series for me to read and finish this year, so I finally started Red Rising and I can't wait to see if I'll fall in love with the series or not, which I am expecting. But for Red Rising, I think I'll probably give the first book probably also 4 out of 5 stars, but I can definitely imagine that maybe book 2 and 3 will be clear 5 out of 5 star reads for me. Now the book I want to read afterwards is The Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brenda Sanderson. I feel like I'm very late into the game when it comes to reading this book because it feels like the whole of BookTube has already read this book, but I have just been more excited about other books, and also this book didn't come out until April in the UK, so I just also didn't have a physical copy, but I finally do have a physical copy. I don't have it with me here since I'm traveling, but I have heard that this is such a cozy, fun, and apparently a very different Cosmere novel. It's apparently more lighthearted. People compare it to almost The Princess Bride, which I'm definitely intrigued by. Usually when people describe a book as fun, I rarely enjoy it, but I am hopeful I will absolutely love this book. Also, this is a standalone, it isn't even that long, and also everyone seems to love it. I don't expect this book to become a new all-time favorite of mine, but it's Brenda Sanderson. I don't really think that he can write a bad book in my opinion. Now, I think I will probably also give this one 4 out of 5 stars. I can definitely imagine that the fact that it's this lighthearted might be a bit of a turn-off, or maybe not a turn-off, but just something that will keep it from being a 5 out of 5 star read, because usually books that are too lighthearted or fun don't come all-time favorites of mine, but I don't hate them necessarily. But I'm really excited to read this one. Now, the fourth book I want to read is We Lie with the Death by Devin Madsen, which is book 2 in the Reborn Empire Quartet. I believe that's what it's called. Now, I recently read We Ride the Storm, which is the first book in this quartet, and the only reason why I picked up this quartet, I mean, you might not even have heard about it because it's severely underrated in my opinion. It's just because I won We Ride the Storm around 2 years ago, and I just love this cover so much. Now, it's been sitting on my shelf for around around 2 years, but I was planning on reading it for the sole reason almost that I love the cover, but also because almost no one talked about it, and usually when very few people talk about a series, I get even more intrigued to see, is this potentially a hidden gem? So I finally read We Ride the Storm last month, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's quite dense, it's quite grimdark, and it's very different from what I expected, but it definitely had that addictive feel to it, and some really satisfying plot twists. So I'm definitely planning on continuing the series with We Lied with the Death, and there's quite a lot to remember, so I don't want to keep too long in between book 1 and 2, because there's just so many names and so much intriguing and backstabbing and plotting and so on. But I am really hoping that this book will be even better, because I believe I gave the first book 4 out of 5 stars, so let's cross our fingers that this might potentially be a 4.5 out of 5 star read, but we will see. Also, let me know if you want a full review for this quartet when I finally finish with it. Now, the 5th book I want to read is The Fall of Babel by Josiah Bancroft, which is the 4th book in the Books of Babel quartet, which I've been reading over the past 2 or 3 months, and we've been having discussions with Philip Chase, Grace, Ben, and Alan, and I've been really enjoying reading through the series, but I must say, I have had some pretty significant issues with every single book I read. I mean, the concept is great and the prose is absolutely beautiful, and overall I'm really happy I picked up this book, because it's just been a really great time, to be honest. But when I picked up this quartet, I had a feeling that this could potentially become one of my all-time favorite series, because it just sounded so unique, and I love modern fantasy that has like a fresh take on fantasy. And unfortunately, while this does feel fresh, there's just been so many issues I've had with it. And from what I've heard, then the last book in this quartet is the most controversial of all the books in the series. People, or at least it seems like most people, just really are very disappointed with it, and I usually appreciate when an author is willing to take on some pretty big risks, and I mean, Bancroft has taken some risks which haven't really landed that well, to be honest. But with this 4th book, it is so controversial, and judging from my enjoyment from book 1, 2, and 3, I am really worried that I might potentially hate book 4, but fingers crossed that Bancroft is really able to pull off something beautiful with the ending. But at the moment, I am not that hopeful, so at the moment I'm guessing I'll probably give it 3 out of 5 stars, but hopefully it'll be the first book I rated 5 out of 5 stars in the series, but I don't really have high hopes for it. And then the 6th book I want to read is The Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin. I actually recently met him in London. It was so much fun, and he and Orbis sent me an ARC around 2 months ago. This was originally a self-published fantasy, but it's now been picked up by Orbit, and I believe they're going to publish the whole trilogy. I think it's a trilogy, and from what I've heard, then this sounds like a fantasy that is quite focused on martial arts, which I haven't read that much about, but otherwise I haven't read that much, except that I know it's an underdog story with martial arts, and that it was originally self-published, and it was really well received when it was self-published. I am a huge sucker when authors are really nice to the viewers, and Alexander, he was so nice, and he even did an interview, which I've actually made a full video called I Met 30 Plus Fantasy Authors, if you want to watch the video and see my chat with him. But yeah, that book is going to be published very soon, and I really want to give it a read this month. We'll see if that happens, but fingers crossed. I have no idea what to expect from that book, but I'll probably guess I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars. I'll be very surprised if I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 stars, because I just don't give that many books 5 out of 5 stars, but hopefully I'll be pleasantly surprised. Now, the 7th book I'm going to read is a book I actually haven't decided yet. I'm actually going to allow my patrons to vote for it. So I picked The Black Company by Glenn Cook, which is an absolutely iconic grimdark series that came out in the 80s, I believe. And there's so many books in the series, but I own the first book, The Black Company, and I really want to give it a read. Apparently it's a series that inspired Steve Erickson to write Malazan, which is just crazy high praise. Now, I've heard very mixed things about this book, but the first book isn't that long. I love grimdark, and this is so iconic, so that's gonna be the first choice my patron's gonna be able to vote from. The second choice is gonna be Hyperion by Dan Simmons, an absolutely icon in the sci-fi genre. I've actually read a bit of sci-fi recently. I read The Martian a couple of weeks ago, now I'm reading Red Rising, and potentially my patrons will vote for the Hyperion, so it'll be a lot of sci-fi, which is definitely a change for me, but this is definitely a sci-fi novel I really need to read, because so many people talk about it being one of the best sci-fi novels ever written, and again, I've heard it's quite character driven, so that's all I really need to hear. And I believe I do own the first book somewhere. I bought it in a charity shop. I don't have it with me here, so that is going to be the second choice my patron is going to be able to vote for. Now, the third book is going to be Red Country by Joe Abercrombie. Now, I have read all the books in the first love except Red Country and Sharp Ends, so there's only 2 more books I need to read, and for some unknown reason I keep postponing picking up these 2 books. but I have really enjoyed reading all the books in the First Law universe. Now, I've heard of some people say that Red Country is arguably the weakest book in the series, and that the Sharp Ends isn't even that great, which is probably a reason why I've kept postponing it. But I mean, Abercrombie, he now almost never goes wrong when it comes to characters and atmosphere and themes. I really just need to read Red Country Sharp Ends so I can say I have read the whole First Law universe, and now that an adaptation is on its way, I am even more excited than before. And the fourth choice for my patrons is Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, which is book 2 in the Red Rising saga if you read the trilogy. I am fairly confident I will love Red Rising, and even if I hate it, I will at least give book 2 a read, because everyone says that book 2 is a huge step up in quality, so that will be my fourth choice. So The Black Company, if they choose it, I think I'll probably give it 3 out of 5 stars, because I've heard it's a bit of a rough start to a series. Now, if my patrons choose Hyperion, then I just have a gut feeling that I might potentially give that book 5 out of 5 stars, because from all the reviews I've heard, everyone just seems to absolutely love it. Now, when it comes to Red Country, I mean, I've never really not enjoyed an Abercrombie book, so I'll probably give it 4 out of 5 stars. That's what I'm guessing, just based on some reviews I've heard about how it isn't the greatest First Law novel. And then if they vote for Golden Sun, then I think it might potentially be 4.5 out of 5 stars, or even 5 stars. But let's just be a bit optimistic and say that if they pick Golden Sun, then I will probably give it 5 out of 5 stars. So those are all the books I'm planning on reading in the next month or 40 days or so. Now, my TBR constantly changes, so there might be some small changes, but I'll try my very best to stick to my TBR. Now, if you want to vote for the 7th read I'm gonna read, then you can join my Patreon. So have you read any of these books, and which books do you think I should pick up first? Definitely let me know. And also, join the read along. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to my Patreon support I do here. I really appreciate it.